I never thought I'd become the main character in one of those viral neighborhood drama stories, but here I am. It all started 3 years ago when I purchased my dream home in Oak Ridge Estates, a charming suburban neighborhood with tree-lined streets and well-maintained properties. The house was perfect: 4 bedrooms, a spacious backyard, and the crown jewel, a magnificent 80-year-old oak tree that provided shade for nearly half my property. I'm a landscape architect by profession, so you can imagine how much I appreciated having such a specimen right in my own backyard. What I didn't appreciate, however, was discovering that Oak Ridge Estates had a homeowners association, or HOA as everyone called it, run by the neighborhood's self-appointed queen, Karen Wilkinson. I met her during my first week in the new house when she appeared at my door with a welcome basket that turned out to be just a folder containing the HOA rulebook, highlighted in various places for my convenience. "We're so pleased to have a new homeowner who will respect our community standards," she said with a tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. She was in her early 50s, with an immaculate blonde bob that looked like it was sprayed into submission every morning, and she wore a polo shirt with Oak Ridge Estates HOA president embroidered on it. I've taken the liberty of highlighting some rules you should pay special attention to since I noticed your garbage bins were visible from the street yesterday. I thanked her politely, trying not to show my annoyance at being reprimanded before I'd even fully unpacked. "I appreciate the heads up. Still getting settled in, but I'll make sure to review everything." "See that you do," she replied with a tone that suggested I was already on thin ice. We take pride in maintaining property values in Oak Ridge Estates. That first encounter set the tone for our relationship over the next couple of years. While I did my best to follow the reasonable rules, Karen seemed to take particular interest in finding fault with my property. My mailbox was apparently half an inch too tall. The shade of blue I chose for my front door was Mediterranean blue, instead of the approved colonial blue. The bird feeder in my backyard was attracting undesirable wildlife. It felt like she was constantly watching my house, waiting for the slightest infraction. But through it all, my magnificent oak tree brought me peace. I'd sit under its sprawling canopy on summer evenings, enjoying a glass of wine and sketching design ideas for my clients. The tree had character, history, and provided a home for countless birds and squirrels. It was also completely within my property line, something I had specifically confirmed during the purchasing process because I valued it so much. The real trouble began last spring when Karen called an emergency HOA meeting about landscaping concerns. I should have known something was up when she specifically mentioned my attendance was required. The community center was packed with neighbors, most looking as confused as I felt about the urgency of this meeting. Karen stood at the podium, laser pointer in hand, clicking through a PowerPoint presentation titled Neighborhood Hazards and Eyesores. After droning on about unapproved lawn ornaments and the proper height for hedges, she eventually got to her main point, a slide featuring a photo of my oak tree. "As you can see," she said, her voice rising with performative concern, "this monstrosity on Jason's property is dropping leaves and acorns on neighboring properties, creating safety hazards and reducing curb appeal. The root system is likely damaging underground utilities and foundations." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "That tree has been there for decades," I said, standing up to address the room. "It's healthy, it's on my property, and it's not causing any damage. I have it professionally inspected every year." Karen's smile tightened as she looked at me with what I can only describe as condescension. "The HOA board has received numerous complaints, Jason. We're not singling you out, but as a professional landscaper, you should understand the importance of responsible tree management." "Landscape architect," I corrected, trying to keep my voice even. "And who exactly has complained?" Because all my direct neighbors have told me how much they love that tree. That's when I noticed a few neighbors nodding in agreement with me. The Johnsons, whose backyard bordered mine, actually spoke up. "We've never complained about that tree. Our kids love the tire swing. Jason let them hang from it." Karen's face flushed, but she quickly regained her composure. "Well, there have been anonymous complaints, and as president of this HOA, it's my responsibility to address all concerns." She cleared her throat and moved to the next slide, which outlined proposed changes to the landscaping bylaws, including a new height restriction for trees that would conveniently make my oak non-compliant. After the meeting, several neighbors approached me to express their support. It became clear that Karen's crusade against my tree was personal, not community-driven. What I didn't understand was why she had such a vendetta against me or my tree. That mystery was solved a week later when her husband, Tom, stopped by while she was at her weekly hair appointment. "I wanted to apologize for Karen's behavior," he said awkwardly, standing on my porch. "The thing is, she's been trying to sell the vacant lot next to your property as a premium spot with unobstructed southern exposure, but your oak tree casts shade over about a quarter of it during prime daylight hours. The developer she's been talking to mentioned it would be worth about $15,000 more without that shade." Suddenly it all made sense. This wasn't about neighborhood aesthetics or safety. It was about money. And Karen was using her position as HOA president to try to bully me into removing a healthy, mature tree for her personal gain. I thanked Tom for the information, which he made me promise never to reveal the source of, and decided to stand my ground. Over the next month, I received 3 separate letters from the HOA citing my tree as a violation of various vague bylaws. Each time, I responded with certified documentation from an arborist confirming the tree's health, structural integrity, and the fact that it posed no risk to surrounding properties. I also started documenting every interaction with Karen, saving emails, and recording our conversations with one-party consent, which is legal in our state. The situation escalated when I received a final notice threatening legal action if I didn't remove the tree within 30 days. I consulted a lawyer who specialized in property disputes, and she confirmed what I already suspected. The HOA had no legal grounds to force the removal of a healthy tree entirely within my property boundaries. My lawyer sent a strongly worded response to the HOA board, and I thought that might be the end of it. I was wrong. The following weekend, I had to travel out of town for a client meeting. I left on Friday morning and was scheduled to return Sunday evening. Everything seemed normal when I left, but when I pulled into my driveway Sunday night, I was met with a scene of absolute devastation. My majestic oak tree was gone. Not just trimmed or pruned, completely cut down. The stump was still there, surrounded by sawdust and wood chips, but the magnificent canopy that had stood for nearly a century was nowhere to be seen. I sat in my car, stunned into silence, unable to process what I was seeing. Then I noticed something else. A large section of Karen's roof, 2 houses down from mine, was visibly damaged, with tarps hastily secured over what appeared to be a massive hole. As I got out of my car, my next-door neighbor, Mike, rushed over. "Jason, you wouldn't believe what happened yesterday. Karen hired some fly-by-night tree service to cut down your oak while you were gone. She was standing in your yard, directing them and everything. But the best part," he said, barely containing his excitement, "is that they clearly had no idea what they were doing. The tree fell in exactly the wrong direction, right onto Karen's house, crashed straight through her sunroom and part of her kitchen. You should have heard her screeching. I've got the whole thing on my security camera." I was still in shock, but a small, admittedly petty part of me couldn't help appreciating the poetic justice. Karen had illegally trespassed on my property and destroyed my beloved tree, only to have it crash down on her own house. But the mature, responsible part of me knew this was a serious legal matter that needed to be handled properly. I called the police immediately to report the trespassing and property destruction. When the officers arrived, Karen came storming over, her perfect Bob Askew and her face red with anger. "This man's dangerous tree damaged my house," she shouted, pointing an accusatory finger at me. I was acting within my rights as HOA president to remove a clear hazard. The police officer looked at me questioningly. Calmly, I explained that I had been out of town, the tree was on my property, I had documentation proving it was healthy and not a hazard, and I had never given anyone permission to cut it down. I also mentioned that I had security cameras that would show I wasn't home during the incident. "Do you have documentation authorizing you to enter his property and remove the tree?" the officer asked Karen. Her confidence faltered visibly. "The HOA bylaws give me the authority to address violations." That's not how property law works, ma'am, the officer replied. You can't just enter someone's property and cut down their trees, HOA or not. You needed a court order. As Karen sputtered indignantly, my neighbor Mike approached with his phone. I have video of the whole thing, officer. Shows her directing the tree cutters, them refusing to use proper safety techniques, and then the tree falling on her house. Got her yelling at them to just get it done before he gets back too. The look on Karen's face was priceless as she realized how thoroughly she had incriminated herself. The officer took Mike's contact information to obtain a copy of the video, then turned back to Karen. Ma'am, you're looking at charges of criminal trespassing, destruction of property, and possibly reckless endangerment given the unsafe tree removal practices described. But I'm the president of the HOA, Karen protested, as if that title granted her immunity from laws that applied to regular citizens. That doesn't give you the right to destroy someone else's property, the officer stated flatly. You'll be receiving a summons to appear in court. As Karen stomped back to her tarp-covered house, the reality of my loss hit me. The tree was gone forever. No legal action could bring back 80 years of growth. I felt a deep sadness for what had been destroyed, but I was determined to see justice done. The following weeks were a whirlwind of legal proceedings. I filed a civil lawsuit against Karen personally and the HOA for the destruction of my tree. Tree law, as I learned, takes the value of mature trees very seriously. My arborist estimated the replacement value of an 80-year-old oak at approximately $70,000, accounting for its size, health, and the ecosystem services it provided. Karen, meanwhile, was dealing with her own insurance company, which was reluctant to cover the damage to her house after discovering she had orchestrated the illegal tree removal that caused it. The tree service company she hired turned out to be unlicensed and uninsured, operating out of a neighboring county with a history of complaints. They had disappeared immediately after the incident, leaving Karen solely responsible. The HOA board held an emergency meeting where they unanimously voted to remove Karen from her position as president. It turns out many board members had been intimidated by her for years and were relieved to have a clear justification to oust her. They also voted to cooperate fully with my lawsuit, distancing themselves from Karen's actions and claiming she had acted without their knowledge or approval. The final blow to Karen's reputation came when local news got wind of the story. A reporter contacted me for an interview, and while I tried to be diplomatic, the facts of the case spoke for themselves. The resulting article, titled HOA President's Illegal Tree Removal Backfires, literally, included Mike's security camera footage of the tree crashing through Karen's roof. The video went viral on social media, and soon Karen became the neighborhood's most unwilling celebrity. The civil case never made it to trial. Karen's lawyer, seeing the overwhelming evidence against her, advised her to settle. In the end, she agreed to pay me the full assessed value of the tree, plus additional damages for trespassing and emotional distress. The total came to just over $100,000, which I was told would come partly from selling her vacation property in the mountains. As a landscape architect, I knew that no amount of money could truly replace what was lost, but I decided to use part of the settlement to create something positive. I hired a team to carefully remove the stump of my fallen oak and prepare the area for a new planting. In its place, I planted 3 young oak trees of different varieties, positioned to eventually provide the same shade coverage as their predecessor. The rest of the settlement went into a fund for neighborhood beautification projects that would benefit everyone in Oak Ridge Estates. Karen put her house on the market shortly after the settlement. I heard through neighborhood gossip that she and Tom were divorcing. Apparently, this incident was the last straw in an already strained marriage. The real estate developer she had been courting for the vacant lot pulled out of the deal after learning about her legal troubles, and the property was eventually sold at a significantly lower price than she had been hoping for. The last time I saw Karen was on moving day, supervising the loading of her possessions into a moving truck. Our eyes met briefly as I worked in my front garden, and for a moment, I thought she might come over to say something. But she quickly looked away and hurried back into her house. I heard later that she moved to a condominium in the city, one without an HOA. The new HOA board, led by my neighbor Mike, adopted a more collaborative approach to community management. They revised the bylaws to include explicit protections for mature trees and limitations on the board's authority to enter private property. They also instituted a transparent complaint process that prevented anonymous reporting from being used as a weapon against neighbors. My 3 young oak trees are still small, of course, barely casting shadows beyond their slender trunks. But they're healthy and growing. In time, they'll mature into the majestic specimens their predecessor was. And every time I look at them, I'm reminded that justice, like these trees, may take time to reach its full potential, but its roots run deep, and in the end, it usually find a way to flourish. Sometimes, when I sit in my backyard on summer evenings, I imagine the story these trees will tell decades from now. Perhaps they'll remember the tale of Karen, who thought her HOA title placed her above the law, and how her quest for control ultimately cost her everything: her house, her marriage, her reputation, and her power. And maybe, just maybe, they'll grow a little taller, knowing they stand on ground where entitlement was defeated by patience, documentation, and the unexpected consequences of cutting corners.